Hey59 fam, how's it going? That was a bit cringe. Today we have got a pretty highly anticipated deck build here for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. My OG build of the Blue Eyes deck had, you know, the homies Felgrand, Arc Brave, and Dark Matter Dragon, but we don't talk about him. And also, no traps. But here's the thing, guys. Times change, you know? And that build of Blue Eyes just doesn't cut it anymore. So, along with the help of the Twitch chat, which, we stream a lot of Master Duel with all sorts of decks, so without sounding like a total show, you should actually probably check that out. Anyway, we and the Twitch chat were able to bring Blue Eyes into today's modern game, and while not being inherently a meta archetype, we really have pushed it to a point where it could almost be seen as a rogue deck, but at the very least, this is the most successful formula for a Blue Eyes deck in 2022. So,
it's time to
show me the deck. We're going to cut that, right? Okay, here is the deck itself in all its glory, and there may be a few things that catch your eye. To understand why this deck works compared to the older formats of the Blue Eyes deck, we need to understand modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Long gone are the days where Maiden was a good stalling strategy for you to awkwardly cycle cards to and from the graveyard in order to get a playable hand. There is a strategy you can use with this deck that focuses on the big blue-eyed boy himself, but really, we just want access to the extra deck as fast as possible in order to win. So before we get into all that, I'm just going to go quickly over all of the cards individually, so you know why they're there and what they do. Starting off, you guys know these four pretty well by now, I would have assumed, so let's just skip right past them. Onto the actual cards for this deck. 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons, I mean, need I say any more? All the strategies in this deck synergize with this card. In fact, in this 40 card deck, 26 cards directly synergize with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, along with pretty much the entire extra deck too. And wherever there is a Blue Eyes, the alternative dragon isn't far behind. We run this guy at 2 because he's just so searchable, but also only really useful when you already have a Blue Eyes in your hand. He is a free 3000 attack guy that can pop an opponent's monster every turn, while also being a good backup plan to get an extra level 8 dragon out in order to access the extra deck. We have the stones, you know these guys probably. These are the way that you'll be able to unclog your hand, as they can be paired with effects of like the Sage, Cards of Consonance, or Melody in order to just thin out the deck by taking out any extra copies of Blue Eyes in there that you don't need, or the Dragon Spirit of White, which leads me on to this guy, the Dragon Spirit of White. We run him at just 1 copy because we do not, okay? We don't want to draw him. This guy is considered a Blue Eyes monster in the hand, deck, and graveyard, meaning we can pair him up with the White Stone of Ancients in order to banish an opponent's back row with a special summon. And this is an effect that happens upon being summoned, meaning it can happen during the end phase of either player's turn, making it quite difficult to counterplay. If you do happen to draw it, you can still pitch it away with Melody or Trade-In, or pair him up with the main engine for this deck, Nebula Dragon. I don't know why I said it like that, but he's pretty good. Nebula Dragon is probably one of the most important cards in this deck, in my opinion. He bypasses the need to run cards like Return of the Dragon Lords at 3 because he himself can basically give you access to the XE monsters for free. The chances are you'll always have a level 8 dragon in your hand. I mean, there are 9 of them in this deck build. And there are a further 7 cards that can just bring one to your hand if you didn't somehow already. Nebula Dragon allows us to special summon itself plus 1 other level 8 monster in our hand, albeit in defense mode. But here's the thing, you pair this up with the alternative White Dragon and you can use the effect of the alternative White Dragon, pop a monster, and then XE summon to get the maximum benefit. The same also applies to the Dragon Spirit of White 2, banishing an opponent's spell or trap before then being able to bring out one of your big boys, which we will get onto in just a second. So that covers all of the main deck monsters except for one, Chaos Dragon Levianeer. He can be used with Trade-In or Nebula Dragon if you really need him to, but his actual role is a little bit more important than just that. He can special summon himself from your hand as long as you have 3 or more monsters in your grave. He banishes 3 monsters from your grave and can special summon himself, and then special summons another monster from your grave, assuming you only had light monsters in there, which, I mean, every other monster in the main deck is. So, for example, if you tried quite a big play last turn, burnt all of your hand resources and got totally shut down, the chances are you probably have a stone or 2 and maybe some dragons in the graveyard. Similarly to Nebula Dragon, he can be a good get out of jail free card in order to XE summon even with an otherwise bricked hand. So if you draw him early, it might be best to hold on to him as a backup plan, but I guess you could use Trade-In on him to try and get a better play if you have a very, very bricky hand at the start of the duel. See, that's the beauty of him. Versatility. He's also searchable with Melody, so in reality, it's kind of like playing 4 copies of him since Melody can just go ahead and get him whenever you need him. So yeah, onto spell cards. I feel like we've already explained why they're good, but I mean, let's just go through them again really quick. Trade-In and Cards of Consonance can be used to declog a difficult opening hand. Melody can search pretty much every dragon in this deck that you'd actually want in your hand, and can also be used to proc a stone's effect yourself. I personally like to pitch the Stone of Legend rather than Ancients with this, and then use Melody to bring alternative dragons and the effect monsters to my hand, since the White Stone will be bringing a vanilla Blue Eyes itself anyway. Return of the Dragon Lords. Oh man, what an OG. In this deck, we only run him at 1, and you'll rarely draw it, but it's typically useful as long as you don't get it turn 1. And you can even use it to bring back Xyz monsters too, so even late game it can be pretty nice. And that does it for the spells. Moving on to trap cards. Rivalry of Warlords and Gozen Match. Gozen? I say Gozen. These cards basically force your opponent out of big combos since they can't have more than one type of monster out and they can't have more than one attribute of monster out on the field. The beauty of this deck is that every monster in the main deck besides the Sages and Levianeer are light dragon type monsters, meaning this won't actually affect your main deck at all, and even a lot of your extra deck monsters too for that fact. Skill Drain and Imperial Order are your last ditch cards. If you're really on the ropes and need to try and keep your basic Blue Eyes alive for a turn or two, Skill Drain and Imperial Order are, they'll be your best bets. Skill Drain also has other uses, but this is kind of the main one. Oh yeah, we also run, I forgot to mention this, we run Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgment as well. Because, we don't inherently have any cards that can really just negate stuff, so it's nice to have those. I also forgot to mention we are running 2 Ice Dragons Prism, because, if the opponent summons something that's pretty good, but they've used a lot of resources to kind of get to that point, you can just special summon one of your opponent's monsters from the graveyard that probably already has the same type as whatever they've got in the field, and you can just banish both. So it's like you banish 2 cards for the price of 1. So definitely a good way to disrupt your opponent's game plan. Finally, we run True Light at 2. It can backfire when used incorrectly, but this can bring a Blue Eyes back once per turn, making Xyz and Synchro Summoning extremely easy. I gotta say, I'd recommend activating this card on your turn rather than during your opponent's, because unless you need to get a monster ASAP, this card will nuke your field if it gets taken out of the game. And there are a lot of monsters that can get rid of it. You don't want to summon all your big guns and then have them all get popped by this one trap being removed. And yes, that has happened to me. If you have a stacked field and your opponent has nothing too powerful stats-wise, you could lock both yourself and them out of monster effects, spells, and then use cards like True Light with less caution. But yeah. So finally, the extra deck. This is what you want to get access to ASAP. Nebula Dragon, Levianeer, Alternatives, Easy Summon Conditions, the Stone's ability to summon. It all leads you to these guys. Starting off, not so strong. We run Twin Burst Dragon. Super situational, but it's good to just have in case. If the opponent builds up a board that has like indestructible monsters, this can kind of bypass those and attack 2 of them per turn, which can banish a lot of your opponent's board when used correctly. Polymerization isn't even needed, so it's really just a situational Xyz monster in disguise when you really think about it. Moving on to the Synchros. If your opponent has a really annoying card and you don't really have a way to specifically get rid of it, this could be your route to overcoming it. A lot of the time, you'll be able to special summon a Blue Eyes alternative dragon, and you will also have a stone or a sage in your hand. You can then normal summon one of them and go into your Synchros. Not as game changing as the Xyz, but still a powerful option, which can also put a stone in the graveyard for you as well. The typical route is to synchro into Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon and then use its effect to bring out the homie Michael, who can spend 1000 life points to just straight up banish any card he likes. If you had another stone or sage on the field from a previous turn, you can then synchro again into Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, who is a beast. A beast, guys. He's a beast. Doing this will also stop Michael from getting backstabbed by the Blue Eye Spirit Dragon's little catch, because he will destroy the card you brought out using his effect at the end of the turn. Michael still dies, but it was a worthwhile sacrifice, Now, I've blue balled you enough at this point. It's time for the Xyz monsters. Typically, you'll want to go into Draglubion and use his ability to bring out yet another Xyz monster. If you're going to go for game, you can bring out Numeron Dragon, who, even with just those 2 on the field, gets a 9000 attack stat. He gets 1000 attack for every rank of every Xyz monster on the field. So with Draglubion being 8 and him being 1, that's just like 9k attack stat on the board. And it also lasts until your opponent's end phase as well. So even if you don't manage to kill with him, he at least won't get popped at 0 stats. If your opponent is on really low life points, you could bring out Heart Earth Dragon, who makes your opponent take battle damage if it fights a monster, and then just ram it into one of their monsters. This guy has 0 attack and 0 defense, so there really is a good chance that you could take out quite a big chunk of your opponent's life points with that. Another option is to Xyz into Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon. Take an opponent's monster, then tribute their own monster to make Galaxy Eyes Cypher X Dragon. By the way, at any point in the duel, if you're attacked with an Xyz monster, then you can bring out Big Zeus, the big man of the deck, who can just shut down your opponent's whole field if he wants to, either on your turn or theirs. So naturally, Blue Eyes is a pretty bricky hand, so we're going to go first in this duel, just to show you sort of an opening hand, a typical opening hand, and what you can do with it. I get this isn't really optimal levels of play, but like, so for example, you could special summon Alternative. If it's turn 2, you could obviously pop his effect if you wanted to. I'd recommend trading in the Blue Eyes then. Get him out of here, draw 2. Then you can go into your synchros. See, this is exactly, if you don't get the Nebula Dragon and you don't get anything else, you can go into your synchros using, in fact, you know, I can just show it. So, if we go Spirit Dragon there, you probably want to play him in defense mode, to be fair, because he's got more defense than offense. And once he's there, obviously, he negates stuff in the graveyard just by himself, so he's a pretty useful monster just to kind of leave him sat there if you want. Or, you could activate the effect, bring out your boy Michael, the homie. There he is. And then you could obviously pop his effect. There isn't anything to target at the minute, but let's just show you how it works. So you can sacrifice life points and then banish a card. Cool. So jumping back in, we've got a nice opening hand here with Trade-In, Ash Blossom. We really want a hand where we start with Nebula Dragon. So, okay, so after pitching the Blue Eyes with Trade-In, which I didn't really want to do, but I kind of had to get anything going, now we've got something we can do. So if we put the White Stone of Ancients there, use the effect of the Sage, get the White Stone out of here. If the opponent had back row, this would be a perfect opportunity to use the Dragon Spirit of White, basically. Obviously, he doesn't at the minute, but typically there'll be a lot of people with back row at this point in the game, turn 1, turn 2, so this would be a good chance to get this guy out of here and banish something in their back row. Now that the White Stone is in the graveyard, you can either let it play out for the turn, which you're obviously more than welcome to do, but if you wanted to, you could obviously activate its effect early. You won't get the benefit of being able to summon at the end of the turn, but you can bring a Blue Eyes to hand, which can then be used to special summon the alternative White Dragon. This is a good opportunity to show some XEs now, so if we use the effect, pop the monster. Now we XE into Draglubion. So if we detach this XE's material here, we bring out the boy, Numeron. And at this point, it doesn't really matter what we use, but I like to just put in the Tachyon Dragon, just because it seems to be the one that I use the least. Activate its effect, and here we go. We remove the XE's material, and suddenly, boom, 9,000 attack. And then you can just hit for game. So that's a good example of how the XE's monsters can get stuff going really quickly. And yeah, that all happened in one turn. I think that's actually a pretty good example of how, without even needing Nebula Dragon, you can get stuff going. And here we are with a similar situation to the previous game, where we started off with a Blue Eyes and a Trade-In. Because we've got Melody, we can always bring back a Blue Eyes if we don't draw on here with Trade-In, so let's just pitch this guy out of here. Draw in. We've got another Melody, which by the way is not a once per turn, so we can activate the effect of Melody twice. So this probably isn't the most optimal way to play, but I just want to highlight how you can use the Levianeer Dragon. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to special summon the Blue Eyes Alternative. Proc the ability of Sage. Get this guy out of here. We could have probably procced his effect actually before we did that. In fact, we should have done that. So again, if they had back row, you'd probably put this guy here, because he can obviously just banish anything. And then look, Levianeer can activate his effect. Special summon that. We can banish probably... I would say your best bet is to banish probably 1, 2, and 3. And from there, you can go back into your XEs, no problem at all. Once he's out there, we'll activate his effect. It will let us steal one of their monsters. He's now ours, and he's basically been duplicated into Galaxy Eyes, for all intents and purposes. And from there, we can special summon the Galaxy Eyes Cypher X Dragon by using this guy as a material. So we took their monster and basically used it to special summon another XE's monster for us. Yeah, I don't know, you probably want to set your Solemn Strike at this point, but then you can go straight into battle. So that's kind of it. Let me know what you think. There are obviously some tweaks that can be made here and there for personal preference, whether you want to run, I don't know, more of something else, or it's more just personal preference though at that point. I think in terms of core structure, I think this deck is pretty much as solid as a Blue Eyes deck can really be. But of course, I'm open to being proved wrong. So let me know if you have a better idea for a card to swap in or out. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, thanks for keeping it locked in with 5-9 plays. And I will, yeah, see you soon.